Gene, a 12-year-old boy, had faced more hardship in his short life than most could fathom. Born on the unforgiving streets of Jackmel, Haiti, he lived with his mentally ill mother, Marie, in a world that offered no mercy. No father, no home, no hope for a future beyond survival. His brief 2 years in school ended abruptly when the stranger funding his education vanished. Yet, Gene's mind burned with brilliance, a flame the streets couldn't extinguish. One day, a chance encounter changed everything. He met Pierre, the son of a wealthy businesswoman struggling at an elite academy. Gene, the barefoot boy from the alleys, became Pierre's secret teacher under a coconut palm. When Pierre's powerful mother discovered them, her actions would reshape Gene's life in ways no one could predict. The air in Jackmel was thick with the scent of sea salt and fried plantains, but for Gene, it was the sting of insults that lingered. A market vendor's voice cut through the morning. "Filthy brat, get out!" A glob of spit landed near his bare toes. Gene didn't flinch. He'd grown numb to the cruelty. He tightened his grip on his mother, Marie, who sat by a roadside ditch, her tangled hair falling over her face as she traced patterns in the sand with trembling fingers. Her faded dress hung loosely, exposing scars and grime, but Marie was lost in her own world, muttering to spirits only she could see. Passers-by glanced, some stared, but none offered help. Gene's heart ached, not for himself, but for the mother he couldn't save. Gene was only 12, but the streets had aged his soul. Names like Son of the Madwoman or Alley Rat no longer drew tears. What hurt more was the pity, the empty head shakes from those who saw but never acted. He imagined Marie as she once was, vibrant, singing Creole lullabies, calling him her little prince. Those moments were rare now, fleeting like the morning mist over the bay. Most days, she screamed at puddles or fled from invisible terrors, leaving Gene to shield her from the world's scorn. He had no father, no name, no trace. Once, as a younger boy, he'd asked, "Who's my papa?" Marie's hollow reply, "The storm, maybe." The wind took him. That was the end of it. Their nights were spent under a crumbling shack near the beachfront market. Rain soaked them. The tropical sun scorched their skin. Their bed was a tattered mat, their blanket the distant crash of waves. Gene had forgotten what it meant to dream beyond the next meal. Each dawn brought the same ritual. Marie waking in a frenzy, clawing at the air, her voice a wail of confusion. Gene would hold her, whispering, "It's me, Mama. It's Gene," until she calmed. He'd clean her with a rag dipped in seawater from a rusty pipe, then lead her to their begging spot by the market. It was a life of survival, nothing more. The market was alive with vendors hawking mangoes and fish, but for Gene and Marie, it was a battlefield. "Mama, stay quiet today," Gene whispered, adjusting her shawl. But Marie stood suddenly, shouting at a passing motorcycle, "Give back my feathers. I hid them in your wheel." The rider swerved, honking angrily. Gene's cheeks burned with shame. He glanced across the street and met the eyes of a schoolboy in a crisp uniform, holding a snack bag. The boy stared, whispered to a friend, and laughed. Gene looked at his own dirt-streaked legs, chipped nails, and empty hands. His stomach growled, a constant companion he ignored. Despite the cruelty, Gene clung to dreams. He yearned for classrooms, for the chance to raise his hand and answer questions. He imagined wearing a uniform, writing in notebooks, reading books unspoiled by rain. He longed for someone to call his name without scorn. But who would send a madwoman's son to school? Who would care for a boy whose mother battled invisible spirits? No one, it seemed. Yet, as he counted the few gourds they'd collected, a 5-gourd coin in scraps, he heard a vendor shout, "Curse this poverty!" Gene didn't look back. He held Marie tighter and whispered, "Amen," his voice a quiet prayer for a better tomorrow. The streets taught Gene resilience, but they also taught him loneliness. He watched children pass with satchels and neat braids, their laughter a melody he could never join. He memorized their routines, the way they adjusted their bags, the way their parents waved goodbye. He whispered to himself, "One day, I'll sit in a classroom. One day, I'll escape this corner of Jackmel. His mother's rare lucid moments fueled his hope, her fleeting smiles, her songs about a prince who'd conquer the world. But those moments were fading, replaced by her endless battles with unseen foes. Hunger gnawed at Jean daily, but he pushed it aside, focusing on Marie's needs. He'd scavenge scraps from market stalls, sometimes finding a bruised mango or stale bread. The vendors' glares followed him, their whispers of cursed child cutting deeper than hunger. He wondered if they were right. Perhaps he was doomed, tethered to a mother who couldn't remember his name. Yet his mind remained sharp, solving math problems he overheard from passing school children, piecing together words from tattered flyers. It was his only rebellion against despair. Marie's episodes grew worse with the rainy season. One morning, she bolted into the street, chasing a shadow she called the thief of light. Jean ran after her, dodging motos and carts, pulling her back just before a truck roared by. The crowd jeered, some tossing pebbles. Jean shielded her, his small frame trembling under their judgment. Back at their spot, he cleaned her face with seawater, whispering, "We're okay, Mama." But her vacant eyes told him otherwise. He wondered how long he could keep her safe, how long he could keep himself whole. As the sun dipped low, casting golden hues over Jackmel's colorful buildings, Jean sat by Marie, who clutched a broken bottle like a treasure. He traced numbers in the sand, simple sums to keep his mind sharp. A passerby dropped a coin, a rare act of kindness, but it rolled into the ditch. Jean scrambled after it, his hands muddy, his heart heavy. He looked at the stars emerging above and whispered, "One day, I'll learn. One day, Mama will know me again." It was a promise to himself, a vow against the darkness. It began with a plate of griot, the savory scent pulling Jean from his hunger's grip. He crouched by Marie near the waterfront, her silent rocking a stark contrast to the market's clamor. His stomach twisted painfully, but he focused on her, tucking her shawl tighter. Then he noticed a man watching from across the path, standing at a food cart with steaming pots and plastic stools. The man, sturdy and kind-eyed, approached with a plate of fried pork and rice. Jean's guard went up. Strangers rarely gave without wanting something back. "What's your name, kid?" the man asked softly. Jean muttered, "Jean," eyes on his toes. "And your mama?" Jean nodded toward Marie, now whispering to a seashell. The man's face softened. "She's not well, huh?" Jean nodded again. "Eaten today?" Silence. The man, Uncle Raoul, handed over the plate. "Take it." Jean hesitated, wary of traps, but Raoul's smile was genuine. "I'm not like that," he said. Jean took the food, the pork tender, the rice warm. It was his first meat in weeks, a small miracle in a merciless world. That evening, Raoul returned with water and soap. "Tell me your story," he said, helping Jean wash his hands. Jean poured out his life, the madness, the market, the school he'd glimpsed. His voice cracked, but he held back tears. Raoul listened, his face a mix of sorrow and resolve. "Tomorrow, come to my cart. Help clean, and I'll feed you. Deal?" Jean nodded eagerly, a spark of hope igniting. He felt seen for the first time, his dreams no longer just whispers in the dark. The next day, Jean swept the cart area, washed dishes, and served customers, watching Raoul's warm interactions. He mimicked the man's ease, earning smiles from patrons. One afternoon, under the cart's counter, Jean traced numbers in the sand, math he'd overheard from a school nearby. Raoul noticed, "Where'd you learn that?" "From watching kids by the bay," Jean replied. Raoul's eyes widened. "Never school. 3 weeks. A lady paid, then left." Raoul's silence spoke volumes, his mind turning over possibilities. A week later, Raoul brought a notebook and pencils, a gift that felt like gold. Jean clutched them, his heart racing with possibility. The following month, Raoul went further. Jean stood in a dusty classroom, hands trembling, wearing a second-hand uniform. Too big, but a badge of honor. "Be good," Raoul said, dropping him off. "Funds are tight." Jean nodded, gripping his bag, determined to prove himself. The classroom was a new world, one he'd only glimpsed through fences. The first school day was daunting, stares, giggles from peers. But when Jean answered a math question before anyone else, the room shifted. He was brilliant, outpacing older students, memorizing poems with ease. Teachers whispered about his talent. "Who taught this boy?" the principal asked. "Uncle Raoul," Jean replied proudly. Evenings, he returned to the cart, cleaning and serving, savoring Raoul's nod. "Good job, kid." It was the first time Jean felt valued, his mind a treasure others recognized. Then, hope faltered. Raoul arrived one night with an envelope, eyes wet. "My brother in Miami got my visa," he said. Jean beamed. "We're going?" Raoul's face fell. "Just me, Jean. I paid your term," but silence swallowed them. Jean nodded, hiding his pain. Weeks later, Raoul was gone. No goodbye. The principal called. No fees, no school. Jean lingered at the gate, waiting for Raoul's return, but the road stayed empty, his dreams slipping back into the dust. Jean's world darkened. He stood by the school gate until the stars appeared, his uniform dusty, his bag heavy with useless books. The guard shooed him, "Go, boy." Jean wandered, no home to return to. The shack now claimed by a vagrant. Marie, unchanged, sat by the ditch, feeding a leaf with rainwater-soaked bread. Jean sat beside her, wiping blood from a swat she'd given him. They curled up on the pavement, surrounded by trash and mosquitoes, her laughter haunting his sleepless night. Jean refused to surrender. He donned his faded uniform, bundled his books, and returned to the school gate, hoping for mercy. The principal frowned. "No fees, no place." Jean pleaded, "I'll pay somehow." Her words cut. "You and that lunatic barely eat." Teachers passed, parents stared, and Jean's cheeks burned with shame. "Please, let me sit quietly," he begged. "No charity," she snapped. The gates closed, and Jean slumped by the wall, tears blurring his notebook's pages. Weeks blurred into a haze of survival. The food cart was sold, its new owner chasing Jean off. His uniform grayed, his notebook ruined by rain, ink bleeding into nothingness. He became another street shadow, invisible to those who once saw promise. Hunger was relentless, but Jean's mind stayed sharp, whispering math problems to himself as he wandered. He scavenged scraps, dodging vendors' curses, each day a battle to keep Marie fed and himself upright. One evening, seeking shelter, Jean saw a boy, barely 9, lighting a joint. "Join?" "Forget hunger," the boy offered. Jean shook his head, fear outweighing his hunger. His mind was his last treasure, the one thing the streets couldn't steal. He walked away, clutching a broken pencil, his resolve a flickering flame. He believed, against all odds, that change was still possible, that his dreams weren't dead. The streets were crueler now, the rainy season turning paths to mud. Jean carried Marie to drier spots, her weight heavy on his small frame. She babbled about stars, stealing her thoughts, her hands clutching air. Jean whispered stories to calm her, tales of a boy who found a school by the sea. His voice was steady, but his heart wavered, wondering if he'd ever escape this cycle of despair. He sold his sandals for 300 girds, buying bread and soup for Marie. The vendor's pitying look burned worse than the sun. Jean fed her, ignoring his own hunger, her confusion piercing him. "Who are you?" "The shadow boy." "No, Mama, it's Jean." She giggled, lost in her world. Jean sat beside her, his body aching, his mind racing with questions he couldn't answer. Why was life so unkind? Nights brought no rest. Jean lay beside Marie, her laughter echoing against the hum of distant waves. He stared at the stars, asking, "God, why make me smart if I can't learn?" No answer came, only the weight of his unfulfilled dreams. He clutched his broken pencil, tracing invisible equations, refusing to let his mind dim. It was his defiance, his hope against the darkness. The next morning, Jean returned to the school's fence, peering through a gap. He couldn't stay away, drawn by the sound of lessons. He mouthed answers, his heart aching for the classroom. A teacher spotted him. "Thief!" Jean ran, his bare feet slapping mud, tears mixing with rain. He hid in an alley, his breath ragged, his dreams battered but unbroken. He'd try again tomorrow, he vowed. Marie's condition worsened, her episodes more violent. Jean spent hours calming her, dodging her flailing hands, his own hands bruised but gentle. He sang her lullabies she'd once sung him, his voice cracking with emotion. The market crowd watched, some mocking, others indifferent. Jean ignored them, his focus on keeping Marie safe, even as his own strength waned. By day's end, Jean sat under a palm, exhausted, his dreams flickering like a dying fire. He traced a map in the dirt, imagining a school where he belonged. A passerby tossed a coin, a fleeting kindness, but it wasn't enough. Jean looked at Marie, asleep with a stone in her hand, and whispered, "I'll find a way, Mama." His resolve was all he had left. Jean couldn't stop chasing knowledge. Each morning, as children tied their shoes, he crept to the back fence of Elite Academy, a school like a palace with golden walls and gleaming windows. He didn't belong, but he pressed on, finding a window by a coconut palm where he could hear lessons. Clutching a pencil stub, he mouthed answers, writing on scavenged scraps, flyers, wrappers, anything with space. One Monday, he lingered too long. A teacher spotted him. "Who's there?" A student sneered. "That crazy boy." Laughter erupted. The teacher stormed out, cane raised. "What do you want?" "To learn." Jean stammered. "Pay fees first," she barked. Jean fled, tears stinging, but returned the next day, undeterred, crouching by a fence gap at another school, whispering along with lessons. At Bright Scholars Academy, Jean listened through a broken fence, echoing times tables and French verbs. A boy threw a rock. "Which scram?" It hit his shoulder, but Jean held his tears, correcting the boy's math under his breath. Another day, a guard dragged him. "Thief, I just want to learn," Jean pleaded. The guard pushed him down. Next time, a beating. Jean limped away, heart heavy but unbroken. Pain piled up, but Jean persisted. He sat under a tree, writing tables in the dirt. When wind erased them, he started again. He dreamed of desks, blackboards, a place where his mind could soar. At night, beside Marie's babbling, he prayed, "God, why lock school doors? Did you give me this brain to suffer?" The silence was deafening, but his will held firm. The streets grew harsher, but Jean's hunger for learning burned brighter. He scavenged books from trash, piecing together torn pages. He practiced reading by moonlight, his voice soft to avoid waking Marie. Each word was a step toward a future he could barely imagine. He whispered to himself, "I am more than this street," his mantra against despair. One morning, he overheard a teacher's lesson on history, memorizing names of Haitian heroes. He stood by the fence, heart racing, imagining himself in a classroom, answering questions. A student spotted him, shouting, "Mad boy!" Jean didn't run this time. He stood tall, his eyes defiant, his mind a fortress no insult could breach. His persistence drew attention, not all kind. Vendors mocked, children taunted, but Jean kept returning, driven by a fire within. He found a new spot by a school's back gate, hidden by bushes, where he could hear lessons clearly. He wrote notes on cardboard, his hands steady despite the world's chaos. Each day was a small victory, a step toward a dream he refused to let die. By night, Jean lay beside Marie, her mutterings a backdrop to his thoughts. He looked at the stars, whispering, "One day, I'll learn. One day, I'll make you proud, Mama." His pencil stub was his talisman, his mind his escape. The streets could take his shoes, his food, his hope, but not his will to rise. Jean's first water tray nearly broke him. Barefoot, balancing a rusty tray of lukewarm packets from Madame's shop on credit, he stepped into Jackmel's chaos. "No breaks, or you pay," she warned. Jean nodded, used to painful rules. The market was a war zone. Adults shoved, boys stole customers, motos nearly crushed him. He pressed on, whispering, 5 gourds closer to food, his goal to feed Marie. By noon, his legs shook, lips cracked. He rested under a billboard, having sold 12 packets, 120 gourds. A woman dropped 200 gourds. "Buy food, child." Jean's thanks were cut short as a teen snatched the money and ran. Jean chased, but the thief vanished. He collapsed by a ditch, sobbing, ignored by passers-by. His heart sank, but his resolve held. He'd try again. Evening brought Jean to Marie, humming and clapping. "Mama, bread," he said, offering scraps bought with his earnings. "Who?" "The shadow with red eyes," she replied. Jean fed her, skipping his share, too tired to eat. Her confusion was a knife, but he smiled, tearing bread into bits for her. His hunger roared, but his love for her was louder. In a broken mirror by their sleeping spot, Jean saw a stranger. Sunburned face, swollen eyes, bleeding lips. He looked nothing like the schoolboys he envied. Yet, whispering, 8 divided by 2. 4, he smiled. His mind was unbroken, a beacon in the dark. He vowed to keep it sharp, no matter the cost. The next day, Jean was back, tray heavy, feet raw. He dodged vendors' insults, sold packets, and counted coins. Each sale was a step toward survival, but his heart chased more. A chance to prove he was more than a street boy. He imagined a classroom, a teacher's praise, a future beyond the tray's weight. Marie's episodes drained him. One day, she ran into traffic, chasing the light thief. Jean pulled her back, heart pounding as drivers cursed. He calmed her with a song, his voice shaking. The crowd's laughter stung, but he focused on her, his only family. He wondered how long he could carry this burden alone. Hunger was relentless, but Jean's dreams were fiercer. He scavenged fish heads from market bins, sharing with Marie. Her vacant smile broke him, but he kept talking, telling her about a school he'd build one day. His words were a lifeline, keeping them both afloat in a sea of despair. The tray grew heavier each day, his shoulders aching under its weight. Yet, Jean moved through the market, his eyes scanning for customers, his mind solving equations. He was more than a water seller. He was a scholar in waiting, a boy with dreams too big for the streets to contain. Night after night, Jean lay beside Marie, her mutterings a constant reminder of their reality. He clutched his pencil stub, whispering, "I'll rise, Mama. I'll make you proud." The stars above Jackmel were his witnesses, his dreams of fire that refused to die, even as the world tried to snuff it out. Jean shouldn't have been at Prestige International School, its iron gates guarded by men in Navy uniforms. Children arrived in jeeps, their lives a world apart from his. But something urged him closer. He slipped through a fence gap by weeds, thorns scratching his legs. Heart pounding, he hid behind palms, reaching a coconut palm by a classroom window, where he could hear lessons clearly. He crouched low, copying French words onto a plastic scrap. A voice startled him. "You're the Chase boy, right?" He turned to see Pierre Laurent, a 12-year-old in a pristine uniform, neat cornrows, and hazel eyes. "No harm," Jean stammered. "Just learning." Pierre tilted his head. "Why?" "I crave knowledge." Pierre sat beside him. "No school. Mama's sick. We're on the streets." Pierre shared his own struggles. "They say I'm slow, that Mama bought my grades." Jean was surprised. "You?" Pierre nodded. "I hide here at lunch." He pulled out a textbook. "Teach me fractions?" Jean explained denominators, and Pierre solved problems, gasping, "I get it." Jean smiled. "You're not slow." Pierre grinned. "You're a genius." They talked for an hour, worlds colliding under the palm. The bell rang, and Pierre said, "Tomorrow?" Jean hesitated. "They'll chase me." Pierre ran off, returning with a guard. "This is Jean, my friend. Let him in at lunch." The guard balked, but Pierre insisted. "Mama funds this school." Jean left, hope stirring. That night, beside Marie's singing, he prayed. "I met a friend who saw me. Keep this real." Their daily meetings under the palm became a ritual. Jean arrived barefoot, clutching scraps. Pierre brought his uniform and lunchbox. They shared food, lessons, and laughter. Pierre improved. Jean's teaching clearer than any teacher's. "Read like talking to a friend," Jean advised. Pierre stumbled, then succeeded, Jean clapping like he'd won a prize. Pierre confessed. "No one claps for me." Jean was stunned. "But you're rich." "Only at parties," Pierre said. Jean held his hand. "You deserve more." They shared dreams, Pierre giving Jean a notepad, Jean telling stories of stars and schools. Their bond grew, a secret kept from Pierre's mother, Madame Laurent, a powerful importer. One day, Jean was late, Pierre panicking. Jean arrived, panting. Mama ran into traffic. Pierre hugged him. Thought you were gone. I'd crawl to come, Jean said. Pierre vowed. I'll tell Mama soon. Jean feared her rejection, but Pierre's fire reassured him. Their friendship was a light in the dark. That night, Jean prayed beside Marie, clutching Pierre's notepad with a drawing of two boys under a palm. Don't let me lose this friend, he whispered. He slept with a smile, the first in years, dreaming of a future where he wasn't invisible. Their palm meetings were sacred. Jean, in rags, taught Pierre, in uniform, under the coconut tree. Pierre's grades climbed, his confidence blooming. Jean's methods, simple, patient, unlocked what teachers couldn't. Don't read like a machine, Jean said. Pierre laughed, tried again, and succeeded, their joy infectious. Pierre shared his lunch, dairy, AK, PWA, plantains, Jean savoring each bite. Best friend? Pierre asked. You, Jean replied. Pierre's smile faded. What if Mama knows? Jean's heart sank. You'll forget me. No, Pierre snapped. Rich don't mix with street kids, Jean said. Pierre leaned close. Jean teared up, Pierre's words a balm. Magic, Pierre repeated. You teach better than anyone. They shared more. Pierre gave a hairbrush, sandals. Jean told tales of stars loving orphans. Their world under the palm was equal, no names or origins matching. They hid it from Madame Laurent, fearing her disapproval. Pierre's fear grew. What if Mama says no? Jean's heart tightened, but Pierre's resolve was fierce. I'll fight. Jean nodded, trusting his friend. Their bond was a lifeline, a secret haven where Jean wasn't invisible, where Pierre wasn't slow. They dreamed together of schools, of futures unbound by their worlds. Marie's episodes disrupted their routine. Jean arrived late, breathless from pulling her from danger. Pierre's relief was palpable, their hug a silent vow. Jean shared his fears. Mama's worse. Pierre listened, offering a biscuit, his presence a comfort. Jean felt less alone, his friend a beacon in his storm. Their lessons grew deeper, Jean teaching history, Pierre reciting Toussaint Louverture's story. Jean's pride in Pierre's progress was boundless. They laughed over mistakes, their bond unbreakable. Jean began to believe he could be more, that his dreams weren't just dust. The secret weighed on Pierre. I'll tell Mama, he promised. Jean's heart raced with fear and hope. He imagined Madame Laurent's rejection, but Pierre's fire gave him courage. They drew strength from each other, their friendship a shield against the world's judgment. That night, Jean lay beside Marie, her stone cradled like a child. He held Pierre's notepad, tracing their drawing. God, don't take this friend, he prayed. His smile was new, his heart lighter, dreaming of a day when he could learn openly, side by side with Pierre. Pierre fidgeted in class, waiting for lunch to meet Jean. His grades soared, thanks to Jean's teaching, but he kept it secret. Teachers praised him, unaware of the barefoot boy behind his success. Pierre's heart raced, knowing Jean waited under the palm, their haven in a world that divided them. The lunch bell rang, and Pierre rushed to the palm with a lunchbox and biscuit for Jean. He waited, heart pounding, until Jean appeared, breathless. Mama ran into traffic again. Pierre's relief washed over him, but his eyes caught a black Jeep rolling in. Guards saluted, teachers froze. Madame Laurent, his mother, unannounced. Jean smiled, unaware, but Pierre's face paled. Your mama? Jean asked, spotting the elegant woman in a black suit stepping out. Jean's heart sank. I must go. Too late. Madame Laurent's voice boomed. Pierre. She approached, age trailing, her eyes sharp. What are you doing here? Pierre stood tall. Lunch. Madame's eyes landed on Jean, ragged and dusty. Who's this? Jean trembled, mute. Pierre stepped forward. Jean, my friend. He teaches me. My grades are up because of him. Silence hung heavy. Madame's gaze softened slightly, studying Jean's shaking form. Who are your parents? Madame asked Jean. No, Papa. Mama's sick, begs near the market. No home, Jean whispered. Her aide shifted awkwardly. No school, no fees. Pierre gripped Jean's hand. Madame watched, her face unreadable. You teach him in secret. Pierre nodded. I was scared to tell you. Madame's voice softened. Scared of me? Pierre whispered. Of losing him. She turned to Jean. I'm not here to hurt you. Show me your mother. Jean pleaded. Don't punish her. She's ill. I won't, Madame said. Pierre added. Promise no chase. She nodded. I promise. The convoy rolled into a dusty alley, flies buzzing, trash burning. Jean pointed. Mama. Marie sat rocking, laughing at nothing, her dress torn. Madame crouched. Madame, Marie mumbled, brought my light. Jean's eyes teared. Madame stood. I'll help. I know doctors. To her aide, called Dr. Emile. Urgent psych care. To Jean, Madame said. You're no street boy now. He gasped. She knelt. You have a mother now. Jean's world tilted, hope flooding in. The jeep left the alley, Marie in an ambulance, Pierre whispering, You're safe. Jean stared through tinted glass, unable to believe the shift. By evening, Jean bathed, wearing Pierre's pajamas. Madame introduced him. Jean stays. Respect him like Pierre. Staff froze, but her word was law. Jean stood in Pierre's room, a stranger to this world of comfort, his heart racing with gratitude and fear. The next morning, Jean wore a borrowed uniform, crisp and new. Pierre clapped. Like me, Jean whispered, dreaming. Real, Pierre said. Jean's heart swelled, his new life dawning as he stepped into a world he'd only glimpsed from afar. Jean and Pierre walked into Prestige International School together. Matching uniforms, matching smiles. Whispers followed, students and teachers stunned to see the street boy beside the founder's son. Jean held his head high, no longer sneaking through fences. He was a student now, his dreams taking root. In class, Jean excelled, answering every question with precision. Teachers marveled. Where did this boy come from? The principal smiled. From the streets, now family. Jean's brilliance shone, his mind a gift that silenced doubters. Pierre beamed, proud of his friend's triumph. Madame Laurent kept her promise. Marie was under Dr. Emile's care at a top clinic. Treatable with time, he said. Jean visited weekly, her initial confusion painful. On the 5th visit, she paused, whispering, You like the sun? Jean cried, hope blooming for her recovery. Jean adjusted slowly, nightmares of the streets lingering. He flinched at sudden movements, but his smiles grew freer. He made friends, but Pierre remained his brother, their bond unbreakable. They shared everything, stories, secrets, dreams, two boys who'd found each other across worlds. Pierre's grades soared, his confidence blooming. Teachers marveled, knowing Jean was the reason. The boys studied together, their laughter echoing through the school. Jean's presence transformed Pierre, just as Pierre's friendship had saved Jean from despair.